Hello. Hello guys. We have another game with the black pieces against Israel Almeida. He's basically a 1500. He opens up with e4 and d4, staking claim in the center, and we react with a French defense. He plays the advanced French variation, pushing his pawn. So we're going to try to break down his center immediately with c5. He defends his center with c3, reasonable moves to try to maintain his pawn chain. Um, we want to apply further pressure to this pawn chain with our pieces, the knight and the queen. I'm going to start with the queen because the queen hampers development of his bishop. In case he wanted to defend with the bishop, he would be hanging his pawn. So he decides to go h4. Okay, I guess he's starting a premature pawn storm on this side for some reason. I'm just going to continue with my plan and develop my knight and attack this pawn another time. So now I'm hitting it 3 times. It's only defended twice. He throws up this pawn on the side of the board, maybe to attack the queen. So what happens if we take this pawn and instead of recapturing, he kicks my queen? Then we can go queen c5 and I don't really see a problem. If we take the pawn and he recaptures with the pawn, we could just take it with the queen. So let's take the pawn that he did not defend. You know, normally they play a move like knight here and defend their pawn. So he doesn't recapture. He pins the knight by developing a bishop. This seems a little weird because he just gave up a central pawn for no reason, and the knight is protected adequately. So if we want to stay up a pawn, we can just capture here, and that way when he takes back, he didn't take back with the knight, which is also a weird decision. Instead he takes back with the pawn, not developing a piece, and now we're just up a pawn for free, so that's nice. And he has this pin going on the knight, but the knight has pressure on this pawn, so I'm going to develop a piece while breaking a pin at the same time, and this threatens the pawn. So he decides to capture. I'm just going to take with the bishop. You could take any way you want, but I'm just going to take with the bishop and lodge it in between these pawns for the time being. So he makes more pawn moves instead of piece moves. Surprising that he got to 1500 like this actually, but so my queen's under attack and I don't want to lose it, so I'm going to move it to a reasonable square that comes with a threat, right? So I'm forcing him to react, and instead of developing a piece and defending, he moves another pawn. This guy has no piece development. It's terrible. And so he defends this pawn, but who cares? And I'm going to continue my development. We have these 2 minor pieces, so let's get the knight out. And this is just, you know, temporary point as we decide to throw our knight into one of these squares in the future. He develops his knight, looks at the center, that's fine. Now I'm going to develop my dark square bishop to this active diagonal, which prevents castling for the moment. And at some point, if I push this pawn, my light square bishop could be open, so that's always the thing. And yeah, like I said, I'm probably going to throw my knight on f5 and then maybe play h5 to cement it in there so he can never kick it with the pawn. Right, so this move and this move. Okay, so he decides to develop his bishop this way and challenge our bishop. That makes sense. The drawback of this move is it removes the rook's protection of the pawn. So what happens if we take the pawn? Well, his rook would be hanging if he moves the bishop. Unless he moves the bishop here. But in that case, we can just move the queen. So this is potentially a free pawn. If he takes the bishop, you can take the bishop or the rook. They both would be winning. Taking the rook is more material, but then he has this dark square bishop in your position, which I don't like. So now he retreats a knight, probably because he sees this, but this is a weird move. Doesn't really make a lot of sense because I'm not going to keep my queen here, because that would be dumb. So we can take this bishop and then move our queen, or we can move our queen first. I'm just going to move my queen, and if he wants to take, he can take. Okay, he doesn't take. He moved his knight from here to here, which is kind of weird and makes no sense. I could give this check and then park my bishop here, which looks really nice. The one downside would be he's staring down this diagonal. However, this check and back threatens checkmate ideas, so I'm gonna go for that. I feel like that's overriding this diagonal. I can always come back. Well, not really. Not if I go here, but I'm threatening a bunch of stuff. I can always maybe castle the other way if I need to. Plus, it's not like he's really getting into my position. You know, now it's tricky for him because he has no pieces defending his king. Now he's trying to run that way, but that allows my queen to come in with check. I didn't think he could do this, because if I go here, he has to go here. And then I could start immediately winning stuff. But his king's in like kind of a ridiculous spot. We can now finally improve our bishop with a threat, with tempo on the knight. And how do you defend that knight a second time? I don't know that you can. It is moving the same piece twice, but I feel like it makes a lot of sense because right now it's kind of like a pawn. Opening this diagonal is kind of superficial, you know, to win a pawn or whatever. So let's put it here. You do have to watch out for tactics and stuff, but at the moment, anything he does, you always have queen takes knight. Like if he moves this here to attack your queen and hit the bishop, queen takes knight type stuff. So now this is really tricky for him. His king is in a terrible spot, and he can't move his knight to defend his knight. Oh, this is ingenious. I didn't even think of this. So because he can't defend the knight, he blocks the queen. That's pretty smart. And this opens up an attack, so that's pretty cool. The downside is it's almost like a pin in a way, but my bishop is hanging. So there's that. Okay, so how do we do this? If we take the knight, it's going to lure the queen away. Then when we give this check, let's say he goes here, the queen won't be there to defend. Interesting. Otherwise, if we move our bishop, that kind of gives him the initiative back. Not the initiative, but it's his turn. Okay, let's just take this knight, which was coordinating with the bishop. Okay. Now what do we have? I say he's going to have some checks, but his king's worse than ours. I really wish my knight was already in. So let's throw this check in. And he's going to go there. I mean, this check, if he blocks with the knight, what's the point? So let's maybe not give him a check yet. We can't castle yet, which is annoying. We could bring in another piece or bring in the knight. let's bring in the knight since it's such a slow piece, short range. And this with the rook here is actually a royal fork threat. We're also up 2 pawns, so simplification would be good for us. He moves his rook over to kind of defend the checks and stuff, but it walks into a different forkable square. In any case, I'm going to improve my rook right opposite his king, and I would sack this pawn. Like, even if this pawn was hanging, I would do this, but it's actually protected twice, which, like I said, I would still do it. Okay, so he moves his rook here, but now I'm gonna go here and create a pin, I believe. And this should be annoying because now if his king wants to escape, it can't because it's tied down to the rook. Okay, but he hits the queen, but the rook and the pawn are both pinned, so this counter wins his queen, so check. So this is a royal fork, a really cool tactic right here, because this is pinned and this is pinned. He moves to the side. Now I could take the rook and win. Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna take, instead of taking his queen, he's gonna take my queen with his knight. I'm gonna take the rook, and now his knight's hanging. So it's not just an exchange. He's just toast because I could also recapture here. Okay, the knight's protected, but like I said, we can capture here. The queens are staring at each other. The rook's coming in. Okay, so he moves his king. Now the rook's hanging in the corner. So we can win. Let's just take his queen because we have a minute. And then let's take the rook. Okay, so now we're up 7 points of material. And now let's get as active as possible with our piece. The most active move I could see. And now let's create a lot of pressure on his pieces. Okay, he moves this. Okay, I'm just gonna kick it because that was his threat, and now doesn't make any sense. And now I'm gonna bring my king in and bring the rook over, and then I'm just gonna lift my rook. Actually, the simplest way to do this with a minute is probably take the bishop with the rook and then lift the other rook, pin the knight, sack the second rook, move the king, and have a completely winning pawn endgame that you can pre-move. I can almost pre-move this ending. I mean, I'm not going to pre-move because of these pawns, but you can almost pre-move. Because now there's nothing to calculate or worry about without knights or this or that, the other thing, right? He's just gonna, you just have to watch out for his trick. You know, he's gonna try to trick you and push when you're not expecting it. But if you're paying attention, he can't push past, like I'm paying attention, so. And see, this is the easiest way to win. Who cares if you have 2 rooks? Just give it up. Like, it's not about if you have 2 rooks or not. Just throw them away so you have a super easy game to play. And when you have connected pawns, you don't need your king. A lot of people run their king up and stuff. Don't do that. Because this is what happens. The king can't keep track of everything. And then the fastest way with a queen or a rook is to cut the king off. Right? You give him as little room as you can. And then the safest thing to do is to pre-move a ladder checkmate. It doesn't even matter where he goes. You don't even have to worry about stalemate. You see? Very easy, low on time. You don't have to figure anything out. But if I had 2 rooks and he had a bishop and a knight, there's still a lot of stuff to look at for your brain. So we have a French in the advance. Instead of developing, they're pushing a pawn. So what we do is we attack the center as black, since he's coming into our territory, where we're going to break down his pawn chain. center, and development. Now we have development, center, development, center, and now free stuff. Free stuff. And the good thing about free stuff is when you take opponent's stuff, it reduces their piece activity because that piece doesn't exist. Development and center. Force move. Queen's hit, so force move with a threat. Development. Development. Free stuff. Force move because the bishop's hanging. And now tactics. And so it's move 16 and we've done only development and free stuff until right now when we give this check, which is still a free move because it's a check. And again, improving a piece for free. And then you're kind of just forced to do something with the bishop because it's hanging. So you might as well save time and take the piece, the only piece that could really jump into your position. And then another move for free, increasing the activity of my queen for free. And then improving a piece, which is really development because this was never really the developing square. It was always F5 was the developing square. And then improving a piece. Developing, again, I know I'm not castled, and it may look weird, but like look at his king. And then we have a rook, a queen, a bishop, and a knight right there. Our king, he has none of that here, right? He has nothing here. All he has is one bishop looking this way, but it's not coordinating, and he can't bring in anything else. And these threats are strong, so it's not easy for him. Of course, if we were castled, I mean, game over, game over, game over. Even this is game over, but that would be just like the end. And then we just play concretely. You know, he hits our queen, we move it out of the way with a pin, and then we see a cool tactic that wins material because we do puzzle rush. Check the analysis real quick, just to make sure I didn't blunder my queen again. And hopefully this shows you a pretty simple way to attack the center. You coordinate with the pawn here, the queen, and the knight, and that's 3 attacking units on one focused spot. So a lot of times white will collapse. And okay, 96% accuracy, so nothing too dumb. Alright. Hopefully that game made sense to you. Pretty straightforward. Subscribe, leave your game in my Discord, and I'll review it for you for free. And good luck in your chess.